with the first pick in the NFL draft.
We're definitely not talking about that tonight. Welcome all. My name's Freddie from the Franchise Tag Podcast. Welcome to our Monday night show. It is not our draft show. I am running on fumes. I've literally been in the house for about 20 minutes from coming back from Munich, Germany today. So Adam, how are you? Firstly, we've been communicating a lot this week. How's the show's been going? Everything been all right here?
Well, as everyone will know now, we recorded a draft show on Sunday morning and forgot to take it off for this one. So, it's all been fine, and good week, wouldn't it? Packers had a bye week; they couldn't ruin my Sunday. So there you go. It's always a positive. But and your guys got a win, so happy days.
I know. I mean, I didn't really see any of it because I was doing all the media stuff at the end and did the and other bits and bobs. So I only really saw the highlights, really, like the little bit highlights they do in the later games. And very happy, very impressive win against a very good team. It seemed like it was a bit of a fireworks game as well, which was quite cool. For the people that were there and for the viewers as well. But yeah, we'll be talking about all the weekend's action as well as Monday Night Football. Without Sky this evening, unfortunately, he's going on holiday, which is really lovely for him. Obviously, I've just got back from Germany. I've tried to watch as much NFL as I can. I'm incredibly tired, so please bear with me if I mess up anything at any given point. So, to be able to just talk about, we'll start in Munich, Germany. Obviously, the Giants now 2-8, losing to the Carolina Panthers 20-17. Panthers going to 3-7 in that overtime kick by Eddie Pinheiro. There was a collective groan around the stadium, Adam, when it realised that overtime was going to happen. I think everyone was pretty cold by that point, and maybe not overly enthralled by the gameplay. However, I think there was some notably good performances by some good players for the Panthers and a few of the Giants as well. Tyrone Tracy had a decent day out, but I mean, how did you think Bryce Young did in this game? Obviously, it's been a lot of controversy around him and obviously Andy Dalton as well. So how do you think he did?
I think he did all right, didn't he? I wouldn't say he was anything spectacular, but I think that he put on a fairly decent performance. He got 126 yards and a touchdown. So I feel like he wasn't really asked to do that much. From what I saw, it felt very much that the run game was the most important part for the Panthers. Chuba Hubbard had a really good day. And yeah, I think really what that sort of performance goes to show is that it might not be completely the end of the road for Bryce Young, but there is a bit of potential there. I don't think it's at Carolina. I really don't. I think that they need to move on from him because it's not, for whatever reason, it hasn't worked. I think the pieces around him, I think have not really worked out, and now it's almost like all the pressure's off. Everyone knows that they're not really going to do a lot, and that it's all kind of a bit like not really doing anything this season. And so I think you're starting to see that he's got a little bit there. I would love to see him as a backup at the 49ers, the Rams, one of them teams, one of them coaches, a McVay, a Shanahan, who can really sort of like help him develop and maybe become a similar story to Sam Darnold in the future. That's something that it really does feel like that could happen for him, and that he showed enough in this game against a Giants defense, which I know they're 2-8. I know that they don't look great, but they do have a solid defense. They're not the worst in the world, and so it just kind of felt like this was a game that felt very much like there might be a bit of potential for the future for him. I just don't think it's going to be with this team.
I really like that for Young, like that idea of going to that's one of them and backing up for a moment.
Yeah.
Learning.
I mean, behind Stafford, that would be great for him. Could you imagine if he had someone like Stafford teaching him what to do and McVay as well?
Yeah, I mean, Dave Canales in the presser afterwards was very complimentary of him, which he's going to be. Well, you say
Yeah.
he's got to be. I mean, he doesn't have to be because he said he dropped him for Andy Dalton the week, so he
Yeah.
can do what he wants. But he said, Bryce has really shown something today and everything like that, and was pretty pleased with his performance. And Chuba Hubbard, obviously, their running back, signed an extension only a few days prior. Bush has a career, a career day, I suppose. 28 carries, 153 yards and a touchdown, averaging 5.46. That's a good day out. That's really, really good day out. He was, I think he came across to me when he was in the press of it. He's all about that. He's all about the work. He's all about the work, and I think he deserves that extension. I think he's been really good.
Yeah.
He came in and he came in and backed up somebody, but I can't think who it was now.
Miles Sanders.
Indeed.
Hmm.
Sanders is back there now, isn't it?
Yeah, Sanders is still there.
Yeah.
So he had a couple of carries during this game as well.
He went out injured. He had a really bad injury. We didn't get really an update on that after the game.
This is kind of what I mean by like the organisation being quite poor and everything not really being done properly. You've just signed Chuba Hubbard to a 4-year deal, I think it was. Yes, he deserved the deal. Unfortunately for him, it's at the Panthers, but he's he does deserve it. But Sanders is still being paid. And you signed Jonathan Brooks last, for your running back in the draft. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the number 1 running back. So it's a little bit like, so you've got 3 running backs that effectively, I know obviously Brooks, you're not paying much because he's a, rookie, but you're not going to play all these guys. It's just not going to happen. So it's a bit crazy in that respect. And it doesn't make a lot of sense, which is why I think, Bryce Young getting out would be good. But yeah, I completely agree. Hubbard, I think he's been really good this season and deserves the contract and had a really good game in this one. As you said, 153 yards, got his touchdown. And the Panthers, they didn't look great. Really, they didn't, but they looked good enough to beat the Giants, to be brutally honest. And I think their defense showed up a little bit. The Panthers, they especially at the end, obviously made the difference right at the very end in overtime. And I think
two picks as well. 2 picks with Xavier Woods. And,
I think just like to a certain degree by trading players away like Deontay Johnson, it feels almost like pressure's completely gone now. This season's a write-off. It doesn't matter. So we're just going to go out and play and see what we can do. And sometimes results like this can happen.
I mean, we do have to talk about the Giants, I suppose, because like I said, I don't think Panthers were pulling up any trees, but and the Giants neither, and they looked quite equally matched for most of the game, of which that was sort of the expectation in the first place that this game would be sort of a close contest, not very high scoring, but really ultimately it was the Daniel Jones errors that led to the loss. I mean, he did rush in for a touchdown, but 22, 37, 190 yards, no throwing touchdowns on the day. Saved a little bit by Tyrone Tracy rushing for 103 yards and a touchdown. I mean, there was huge calls throughout the internet of why are we still playing him? Let's just get the backup in. Who's Drew Lock at the minute, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're not learning anything new, are we? You know what I mean? Like, we can talk about this, but this is not something that we've not talked about before, nor has every other podcast, and every other media outlet. Like, we know what this is now. We know what it is.
Yeah, so yesterday when me and Andrew were recording the draft show, we were doing about team needs and we were doing the NFC, and obviously it was funny actually because I put a message out in one of our group chats and just basically came out and said we've just been really nice about the Giants and they've done this sort of thing, and it's like, and the reason that we were nice about them and what we liked about them is that when you actually look at the team overall, it's not awful. It's not a 2-8 team, really. The defense, I think, has been pretty solid and done quite well. The wide receivers, obviously, Malik Neighbors has been great in his rookie season. I think Wan'Dale Robinson, he had a decent game yesterday. Nothing special, but did all right. You got a few receivers. They probably could do a bit more. And it does feel like Tyrone Tracy, in him, they've found someone who obviously isn't Saquon Barkley, but is a serviceable running back, and as given that he's on his rookie contract, will be fine for the next sort of like 3-4 years type running back. So everything is kind of trending the right way despite the record. But as you say, it's nothing new, and the problem basically reared its ugly head again yesterday when Daniel Jones, 2 interceptions. He's thrown for 190 yards, but like I say, 2 receptions, and just a QBR rating of 33.9. I mean, it's pretty dire. It really is. And
tells the whole story, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, it does. And I mean, when you start looking at the QB rating of Bryce Young being 58.5, that's not great. But when you've got Bryce Young outperforming you, that does say quite a lot at the moment. And the problem is that they can call for Drew Lock and they can call for Tommy DeVito if they want, but we all know what's going to happen with them 2 guys as well. We've all seen it. We know that there isn't going to be anything amazing that's suddenly going to mean that there's going to be a massive change in fortune. And it feels like now that the Giants are just kind of just treading water for the rest of this season because they need to get themselves a quarterback. We were talking, we reckon there's 3, or that Andrew feels very strongly that there's 3 guys that you would want as your quarterback, in which case you're going to need to be in the top 3 in order to get them. And I'm pretty certain that they are now, aren't they? I think, so they've got the 2nd pick at the moment, if it finished today. So, they've put themselves in a position where they can get a new quarterback, and that's what they need to do because Daniel Jones just isn't it.
That's what I like. The head scratcher for me is like, we need to bench Daniel Jones now. Why? You're losing. You're getting a better draft pick. You know what you've got with DeVito and Locke. You're paying him, so you should play him. You know what I mean? Like, you're not just going to leave millions of dollars sat on the bench out of, he's just not very good. Like, because I think fans would argue, but maybe they could give us a spark for what? What's the point of a spark at this point? Like, you've got 2-8. Like, what spark do you need? You're not overtaking Jaden Daniels. You're not overtaking Jalen Hurts. Unfortunately, you're probably not overtaking Cooper Rush at this point now. You know what I mean? Like, why do that? Why do that? You might as well just, what you're going to have with him. You can game plan the same way you game plan with him in the team. Like, you might as well just do that. Like,
the only reason to try and do something is to try and spark something in the fan base, to try and get them to come and buy tickets. I mean, that is literally what you're looking at here. It's not about anything to do with on-field things. It's literally just a hope that people might come out and go, we'd rather go and watch Drew Lock than Daniel Jones, which, I mean, don't know. But, they might think in that way. But, they're now that they're at this position, you're at week 10 that's just been played. You're not going anywhere. You're not gonna make it into the playoffs. So, and the one thing you need is a quarterback. So you might as well just sort of like, quietly go about your business, lose a few more games, and accidentally end up with a top pick, so that you don't have to trade up and get a guy. And maybe that's the way forward. It's just a matter of whether they're going to be happy with constantly losing, and whether they're going to be happy to keep the coaching staff that has not been able to do anything. That's where the problem might come.
Because the Giants organization will have to be seen to be doing something, won't they? They can't be just seen doing nothing. Like,
no.
Or the coaching staff as well. That might be one of the reasons that Daniel Jones may get dropped and Drew Lock comes in, is that the coach upstairs might be going, look, we want to keep you around for next year if we get into this position, but you need to show that you're doing something different within this team. And I mean, it's just an aesthetic thing, really.
Yeah.
It's not going to change the outcome of what the Giants season is going to be, which is going to be a terrible one. So, rock and harder places.
And I haven't seen any of the newspapers in New York, but I imagine they're not being particularly kind today, and they're probably getting it in the net quite a lot because, they've basically gone and lost to a team that most people think are probably the worst team in the league, even if their record doesn't show that. Overall, it's kind of that feeling about the Panthers. So yeah, it's I imagine they're getting it in the neck quite a lot.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be Daniel Jones this morning, I don't think. So let's look at the results of what happened earlier in the week. We had the Bengals go up against the Baltimore Ravens on Thursday Night Football, with Ravens winning at 35-34. And then on to Sunday, we had the New England Patriots beating the Chicago Bears 19-3. I mean, yeah, it's a torrid time in Chicago at the minute. Buffalo Bills went to the Indianapolis Colts and won 32-20. The Vikings in a very close slate against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Very surprising. This one 12-7. The Broncos losing in the last second with a blocked field goal, losing 16-14 against the Kansas City Chiefs, which obviously I definitely saw that highlight in Munich, and it was crazy. It was crazy. But I never got to see the replay. So like it happened so fast, but I don't actually know who blocked it or anything like that. So I'm going to have to try and find that out and sort that out this evening, I think. The New Orleans Saints, with Dennis Allen out of the building, bounce back win from that 20-17 against the Atlanta Falcons in that divisional game. The San Francisco 49ers traveling to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 23-20. And the next game that we're going to be talking about is the Detroit Lions playing in the late game, the Monday night game. Sorry, the Sunday night into Monday morning game. Beating the Houston Texans 26-23, moving on to 8-1 on the season now. This Detroit Lions team, I mean, everyone in Germany anyway had a collective thing of like, everyone likes the Lions. Everyone thinks that this Lions team could be really something. There's actually a few things I will say to you that I heard a Lions fans say before this game, the night before this game, in fact. So it wasn't after seeing Jared Goff throw 5 interceptions, which is going to be the headline for this game, really, isn't it? Rather than Detroit winning, is the fact that Goff had really quite a terrible time in large portions of this game against the Houston Texans defense. What did you make of it?
Yeah, he really, really struggled in this one, and I mean it was outside, so we're gonna have to throw that one into it, that he struggled outside again. But 5 interceptions, he's got 2 touchdowns. QBR rating of 29.1 is worse than Daniel Jones's one, so that's how bad it was. Yeah, it was a tough night for him, and the Texans just constantly brought pressure onto him, and he couldn't deal with it at all. And I'm trying to remember who their right tackle is, but he was out injured, and that I think really didn't help the situation. And so the O-line had a couple of injuries on it, and I think that didn't help. And then Goff did what he normally does when you put a load of pressure on him, and he just really struggled to do much, to be honest. And really it was a mixture of a bit of the run game, sort of like starting to get there was a couple of chunk plays from Gibbs and Montgomery, which I think kind of turned the tide a little bit in the second half. And then Goff kind of did get a few plays where he wasn't too bad, and he sort of like got the job done. But yeah, I mean, this is a game that they shouldn't have won, really. The Texans should have won this, and it kind of was obviously, like, they're missing Stephon Diggs, they were still missing Nico Collins due to injury, and it's really costing them that because they looked in the first half, they got in quick, they scored very quickly, looked good. And then in the second half, they didn't put any points up at all, and it all kind of just fell away. And it just felt like there was a bit of an inevitability that the Lions were going to get this, and it kind of like in a weird kind of way, because the Lions are very, very different to the Chiefs in the way that they play. But there was that inevitability about it, which you get with the Chiefs now. And the Lions, it kind of felt like no matter how bad Goff was, no matter how many people got injured, I mean, Sam Laporta ended up coming out, getting injured, it kind of just didn't matter, because you just kind of got that feeling that they're just going to get there in the end, and they did. So, yeah, a game that the Texans will probably feel that they've lost and that they should have won, but this Lions team just keeps sort of chugging along, and I think it's going to be near impossible to stop them until you reach the playoffs.
I think this game probably has said the most about them this season, in a way. Like, we all knew they were pretty good, and you know, there's a collective love for Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, the OC and DC around the league and around fans and NFL people alike, and it shows. You know, it's sort of that really corny saying, you know, when you're gonna crumble or you're gonna be, you know, morphed into the diamond that you become, and they are turning into this team that has had adversity. I think wins like that in this league are sometimes more of a catalyst than most things like that, you know, than most other things that happen in this league, because it shows, you know, we were not good, terrible, you know, 5 interceptions, and we still came away with a win. Like that shows a lot about this team and the character of this team, which I don't think has ever been that's never been a question mark over this team or a doubt of this team. It may have been about Jared Goff on points, but he's played at an MVP level this season. Yeah, he's had a bad game here, but I think he's going to bounce back. I don't think this rocks him too much. You know, if he gets 5 picks in this game and then gets picked, you know, I don't know, let's pull a number out of the air, six more times the rest of the season, you know, he's done well down the stretch then, hasn't he? You know, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see how their like bounce back effects from this next week. On the other side of it, the Texans, back-to-back losses now. I know they're without big key players in this team, but they've really just lost a step this year. CJ Stroud is not playing at the level he was playing at last year. And I think not many people have been saying, like, no one's really said that much about that, I don't think.
No, I don't think it has. I think injuries have kind of been the excuse that they've managed to sort of get away with it a little bit. But yeah, he has struggled a little bit this year. I mean, his QBR rating was 33.0 in this game, so it wasn't fantastic at all. I think that they've just been decimated with injuries, like all season as well. It's not like they've had a couple of guys go out for, say, like 2-3 games. It's like, you know, Nico Collins has been out for 5 weeks now, possibly 6. Obviously, Stephon Diggs isn't going to play now. Joe Mixon lost about 3 or 4 weeks earlier on. You've now got Will Anderson out as well on the defense, and it just kind of all feels a little bit like they are getting hit quite badly through injuries. And, you know, I mean, when John Mechie is your receiver with the most yards on the game, it's a little bit like it's just not really happened. And, you know, Tank Dell hasn't been the same guy as last year. So, yeah, it's really difficult. And I think the other thing is, and I do kind of believe this a bit, because there's other teams that are like this. The Falcons are definitely a team like this. When I feel like the Texans have really prioritized the run this year compared to what they did last year. I think Mixon has been a big part of it, and they've wanted to use the run. And even when Mixon was injured, it was like Cam Akers was doing quite a bit. Agumbawale was doing quite a bit. I think certainly with the Falcons, I noticed with Kirk Cousins, when he gets into a rhythm and he's passing the ball consistently, it gets better. And it feels like that might be the same with Stroud a little bit, by taking because last year he was throwing the ball a hell of a lot more than what he was this year. And it just kind of feels a bit like whether he's just not getting into the rhythm of things. And maybe that's why he's struggling. But yeah, I mean, this Texans team has just been taken out by injuries. And I think they were 23-7 at the half and didn't score another point. And obviously, like, you know, you're playing against a really good team, so you've got to come out and give the Lions the credit that they deserve. but you got to be looking at getting some points in the second half. Just to completely do nothing at all, even if you're just getting a few field goals, it feels like that was the problem. And I don't know if it was almost a little bit of like, oh, we're in the lead, we got to protect it, or whether it was just, you know, it just reached the point where they just couldn't do anything because the Lions just had the momentum and that was the end of it, sort of thing. But yeah, it's a tough one. It's a really tough loss, and I think I don't think it matters. I think they'll still win the division. I think they're the best team in that division. But the problem is that obviously not against the Lions, but once you reach the playoffs and you play a team of this sort of caliber, are you just going to fall away again? And it kind of feels like they might.
It sort of felt like at the end of last year that it was like, oh, this team could like legit have a good chat. Like this team could think about an AFC Championship this year. They made the moves that would indicate that.
Yeah.
And then really it feels like they're taking a bit of a step back in some sense, not every sense of the word, but yeah, I don't know. They seem to they excited and enthralled this year, last season, and I don't remember many Texans games this year where I've been really sort of wowed by them, I suppose.
No,
if I can recall.
I think it's a fair thing to come out and say that everybody probably expected them to kick on a bit more than what they have done. And I think a lot of that is due to the injuries and missing guys. I wouldn't know. I can't remember them having any particular big injuries last year. And so I do wonder if that's kind of where the problem has come in, and it just hasn't quite worked out for them because of that. But yeah, I think it's been a tough season so far for them.
They've been in every game. Well, most games they've been in as well. I mean, they got blew out by the Vikings 34-7, and they smashed the Patriots 41-21. I mean, every other game. Touchdown in it for most games, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more, but they've kept themselves in games. And you know, I've said this before on the podcast a lot of times. You know, it is a measuring stick of teams. You know, when you're having them margins, the fine margins are what push you over the line, and that's, you can sometimes lean on the wrong side of it, or you can sometimes lean on the right side of it, and you may just be a good team, but if them wins and them results are going your way, you know, you suddenly you put on that pedestal just a little bit more, and maybe 6-4 is a win margin that's actually, you know, that could have been very easily the other way around. It could have easily been 8 wins. It could have easily maybe been 2 wins. You know, if some of these teams had got over the line against them. So, you know, I think there's a lot to come from this team. The thing I was going to say about the Lions was we sort of had an interesting conversation over the weekends about potential coaching moves and stuff like that. And admittedly, this was quite a drunk fan, but I had never heard anyone said this before. And we were saying, well, we think Ben Johnson's probably going to be the hottest property in the coaching market next year. And he was like, I don't think Ben Johnson's going to go anywhere. And we were like, how can you? He's going to be on everyone's lips. And he was like, one word, dynasty. He was like, I think there's a little bit of a thing with Dan Campbell where they all really believe in him and really want that style. And really, I know Belichick had, he had different coordinators throughout his tenure at New England, but a lot of them stayed there for a long time.
Yeah,
you know, and it didn't work out for a lot. You know, never worked out for Matt Patricia, never worked out for the OC, whose name has completely just escaped my brain.
Josh McDaniels.
Never worked out for him anywhere. Like, what's to say that Ben Johnson goes somewhere and it doesn't work, and you know, and he comes, you know, maybe goes back to the Lions. I don't know. I just thought it was a very interesting take that I'd never heard.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, he will be the hottest, you know, name that people will go for because of the way that the offense plays. I mean, that everyone's going to want any team that has a vacancy is going to want him. But I think I mean, I can understand that the idea of a dynasty and sort of trying to do that. I just feel that as great that they're not there yet. I still think you can beat them over the top defensively. Yeah. I think that's their weakness. I don't think it's been sorted out. The guys that they have brought in have got the potential to sort it out, but they haven't got there yet. And I mean, if you had them in a one-off game against the Chiefs, yes, they have a chance to win, but they won't because it's the Chiefs, and that's the end of it. And that's the problem. It's very difficult to have a dynasty when you've got another team already having the dynasty. I think that's where the problem's going to be for them. So if he thinks about it in that way, I think at some point he might stick around for another year or two with the Lions in the hope that they can get over the line. But all the time you've got this happening on the other side, it's going to be very, very difficult. And I just think that eventually he's going to want to be his own guy.
I agree. I agree that eventually you probably don't want it. I think every coach wants that. I think every coach wants to give it a go at least, and sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it does.
But the one thing I would say is I do think he's going to make sure that he goes to an organisation that's like really like set up pretty well, and he's just missing the head coach kind of organisation. Like he would, I could never ever see him turning up at somewhere like the Panthers. It's got to be somewhere where it's like everything is pretty okay. They've just need a new coach. But
Dallas.
I don't know about whether you would say everything's okay for the head coach.
Right, let's finish off the slate of games that happened over the weekend, and then we'll go on to Monday Night Football. Let's just wait for things to load for me. So as Adam accounted earlier, that Steelers beating the Commanders 28-27 in a very, very close game. We also had the LA Chargers beating the Tennessee Titans at home 27-17. We had the Cardinals smashing the New York Jets 31-6. The lad that I was hanging out with on Sunday night is a Jets fan, and he was in disarray, and actually everything. He's a very, very knowledgeable guy. He's a guy who we know very well. Shout out to Will. He's a great dude. He kept going like we soft tackle, and it was like every time they did a tackle, it was still get yards. It was like everything he was saying, it was pretty true. Apart from trying to bet on Lad McConkey to be next touchdown scorer, and it went to Quentin Johnston. That was one encouragement that I probably shouldn't have done to him. But and then we had the Philadelphia Eagles absolutely killing the Dallas Cowboys 34-6. I mean, both teams putting backups on backups at this point. By the end of that game, really, it was a pretty terrible slate for the Cowboys, who are very much in disarray at the minute. Let's move on to the Monday Night Football game, though, and that is the Miami Dolphins, who are 2-6, currently going to Los Angeles to face the Rams, who are 4-4. A sort of interesting few weeks for both of these teams, and they've sort of both maybe met each other at the wrong time in a way. I feel like maybe one of them would have been a bit more favoured than the other a few weeks ago, but they're both teams we're in the hunt for something, aren't they? Both of these teams, they're both finding their way a little bit more in this season. How do you see this one going though in LA for Miami?
I think it's going to be a bit of tough sledding, I think, for the Miami Dolphins in this one. I feel like the Rams are starting to get it together a bit more. They have got all their guys back. I think even the two O-line guys who have been out injured for quite a while, they are meant to be. I'm not sure if they're back tonight.
They've literally just 2 minutes ago, Schefter and Ian Rappaport have reported they're both officially active. Stephen Vila and Jonah Jackson, and will play tonight.
Yeah. So they're basically pretty much, I would say, at full strength now. I don't think they're missing anything else, and it just kind of feels a little bit like the Rams. So they've got all their guys back and they're all fit. And I think that if you just sort of like looked at the two teams and you went, based on paper, you would probably stick to the Rams side, I think, in this. And I think because a lot of them guys are going to be fit and pretty fresh as well, really, because obviously they haven't played, that I think there's going to be quite a positive, a strong chance that the Rams will come away with the victory here. Tyreek is a game time decision that I don't know if anything's come out, but they still hadn't said anything when we came on. And I think I know he hasn't been great, but if you lose someone like Tyreek, I think it just makes everything harder. And that's going to be tough for the Dolphins to overcome. And then, defensively, I would say neither side have been fantastic defensively. That you can score on the secondary of the Rams. That's where their weakness is. They're pretty good at front seven, but the back bit is a real struggle and something they need to sort out. But if Tyreek's not there, then who's doing that? So it's going to be difficult, I think, for the Dolphins to be able to do anything. And I like the Rams to win it, probably reasonably comfortably as well, I would have thought.
You think?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I'm not saying that they're going to win it by a mile.
Dolphins defense hasn't been that bad this year.
No, it hasn't. It's been all right. I just think that trying to mark out Cup and Puka is going to be difficult, I think, for a Dolphins defense that, like you say, they have been all right. They haven't been too bad. I think they're pretty middle of the road, but they're not too bad. And I just think it's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough one. I don't feel like the Dolphins will be able to put up a load of points here. I don't know. I feel like that the Rams are just a slightly better team and a bit of a dark horse for that division. I know the Cardinals won again, but it does feel like that they're, if they can get this win, then they've got a chance of getting somewhere.
There seems to be a team that's getting like the wind in their sails now, like at the right time. Like, bring back the two linemen, Puka and Cooper are both fit. Jared Verse is playing at a real high level. Their back end defense is pretty decent. Like they're figuring. I think they're sort of figuring it out a little bit. Like I feel like I know it's a really obvious statement, but when you haven't got Puka and Cooper for that long, like you're not going to win many games. Like you need more. Like and then lo and behold, they come back and now they look like a really good team and slated to maybe win the division as well. Like this team's got a lot more about it. I think it's always so much recency bias in the NFL, but the Rams are. McVay's a great coach. The Rams are a good team. They've just had really bad injuries for the last 2 seasons and have had bad injuries this season as well to open it. So they're not a bad team. They're not a bad organization. They just get a bit of bad luck a lot of the time, which is you make your own luck in some situations. But I feel like Dolphins, they bring Tua back. They looked way better with Tua, but it's just a team that I just don't trust it. I just don't trust them at the minute.
I kind of agree. Really, I mean, it's kind of. I think a lot of people probably feel the same with the Dolphins. It's a bit of a weird setup. The whole thing with the Dolphins, it's very much built for speed, isn't it? And that's the idea. But it's kind of like that's
speed
all it
and
is.
Trickery. Speed and trickery.
Yeah. So there's no parts. Yeah, it's one of them things where it's almost like if you can get them sort of plays working and everyone's on the same page, then great. But as soon as something comes out of that, and obviously for most of the season it's been Tua, then it all kind of falls apart. And the defense does do okay, but it doesn't matter because the offense can't put the points up. They did pretty well against the Bills last week, and I know they lost, but they looked like a team that had the ability to put points up. And like I say, this Rams secondary, you can score on it. So there is a bit of hope for them. I just think that the overall team of the Rams is probably a little bit better. And now that they've got everyone back, it just kind of feels like it's going to be very difficult to overcome.
What's your score prediction?
I think it's going to be reasonably high scoring. I mean, it's something like 27-20. I think something like that is probably where it's going to go. Like I say, I think you can score on both defenses here. Not they're all right, but not fantastic. And so with them weapons out there, a lot of that's going to depend on if Tyreek's out there. But if Tyreek is out there, then yeah, 27-20, maybe even more, maybe like a 31-24 type game. So yeah,
I was going to go 30-23.
Yeah. I mean, I think
maybe even like
that's about
32-23, maybe. Yeah.
I mean, the over/under is 48.5. I think that it could go over on this one. I think that, you know, with them guys that are out there on the offense, I think you've got a good chance of it. But yeah, I think it's not a bad one for a Monday night football game. But Fred won't be staying up because he's falling asleep now. So
that is probably a good moment to probably end this podcast. I mean, we've had way worse Monday night football games, so it should be a good one for anyone who wants to stay up. I'll be watching the highlights on the tube tomorrow morning to work. That will be my morning, which will be lovely. Adam, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you guys for watching and listening and subscribing and following us on social media. Thank you to all the people that I met in Munich over the weekend, and also the NFL people within the NFL. The representative of people that are in the NFL that sort the media stuff for us and allow us to have this access, which we're very privileged to have, and we really enjoy it. And thank you for everyone that's watched and shared our content over the weekend and as well, because it's been a lot of work and it's been a lot of fun. And so obviously big announcement over the weekend, but it looks like there's going to be more games internationally, which should be really good fun. Some new cities, but hopefully, and new countries for that matter, next year for certain, with Madrid. So hopefully we'll be able to maybe do that as well, which would be really cool. So thank you again. Make sure you catch our show tomorrow, the Tuesday chat show, The Good, Bad, the Ugly, and our college show later in the week, and also the betting show of the weekend. And as Adam said earlier, make sure you check out our draft show that we did, that we've been putting out so far. So if you're in the spirit of getting into draft season, then go and check that out. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you all again very soon.